Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we are continuing to march forward through yet another season together. As always, you can find our 100% free, 24/7 boots on the ground coverage of the Jacksonville Jaguars when you follow us on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and today we are going to talk about two major injury updates for the Jacksonville Jaguars Week 7 clash with the Los Angeles Rams in London. Now, of course, the Jaguars, they've been fairly banged up the last couple weeks. We already know that they're going to be without Devin Lloyd. They were missing Trayvon Walker on Monday Night Football, and then he played sparingly against the Seattle Seahawks. They missed De'Ami Brown a couple weeks ago. Robert Hainsey didn't play last week. But looking at the Jaguars' latest injury report, it's fairly positive. It's fantastic news, frankly, for the Jaguars. For the Jaguars, on Thursday, De'Ami Brown was limited again with a shoulder injury, but he's been limited in practice. Should still be expected to play. Obviously, Devin Lloyd and Quentin Morris didn't make the trip, so they didn't practice, but they still have to be listed. Eric Murray was limited with his neck injury, but he was limited the week before and played against the Seahawks. Trayvon Walker was once again a full participant. Anthony Campanelli said that, he's somebody who they would more or less kind of examine, how comfortable he's feeling throughout the week. He might play a similar role to what he played on Sunday, which was a lot of third downs, but otherwise, not getting as much run as, say, Emmanuel Ogbah. But the important one, folks, center Robert Hainsey, who was limited on Wednesday with the hamstring injury that kept him out of last week's game and out of the final quarter of the Chiefs game, practiced in full capacity for the Jaguars on Thursday. I don't think that can be understated, people. I think Robert Hainsey has been, down for down. It's him or Anton Harrison in terms of who's been the best Jaguars offensive lineman this season. Hainsey, I think, has done a little bit more in the run game. He's been a little more balanced. Anton's obviously been really good in pass pro for the most part, but I think Hainsey has been really the best the Jaguars have had of both worlds. Somebody who has made a lot of plays, in the trenches. He's gotten some good movement. He's made a lot of plays at the second and third level and in space. He's been really effective on screens. And then that's on top of, obviously, the job he's done as a pass blocker. I think Hainsey has been a breath of fresh air for the Jaguars at the center position, because they definitely have gotten uneven play from the center position for the last couple of years. Obviously they go to Luke Fortner for 2 years. His rookie year, definitely quite a few downs. It just looked like he never had the play strength to play center full time. And then obviously 2024 had a really down season. 2023 had a really down season. They replaced him with Mitch Morse in 2024. Morse plays okay and ultimately spends just a year in Jacksonville. It wasn't a part of, what the new regime is building. He opted to retire, kind of right off into the sunset, if you may. And they signed Hainsey from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to be his clear replacement. And I thought Grant Udinski made a good point a couple weeks ago that all the other four offensive line spots, both guard and tackle spots, they've rotated a lot of people during training camp, during the offseason program, during the preseason, even during the season. You've seen Cole Van Lannon play guard. You've seen Chuma Edoga play guard and tackle. You've seen guys move around. The one spot where they haven't done that or weren't doing that in preparation was center. Robert Hainsey, was clearly always going to be the guy who was there every single play, no matter what. And when they signed him from Tampa, there were definitely some external questions. National analysts, even me and myself, for the contract they paid him, going out and pursuing him. after he was more or less benched in favor of a rookie Graham Barden. I think if you ask Tampa Bay right now who they would rather have at center, the answer would probably be Hainsey. That's the evaluation I missed on, the Jaguars hit on. He's been a very good player for them. And getting him back against the Rams, I think, can't be understated. And like I said earlier this week, Jonah Monheim did not play poorly against the Seahawks. I actually thought he had a solid game. Gave up a couple pressures. Look at the rest of the offensive line, the pressures they gave up. In terms of, steady play, I thought he was maybe their most consistent and reliable guy on the day against the Seahawks, making his first NFL start against a really, really good defensive front and a really, really good defensive scheme. So I don't think getting Hainsey back is a big thing just because he's now going in over Monheim, because I actually think Monheim played well. But the simple fact that they are getting their communicator, their leader back. They are now going to be whole. Ezra Cleveland has played a lot more snaps next to Hainsey, and so has Patrick McCary, than they have played next to Monheim. And they're getting him back against a defensive front that I would say is even better than the one they played last week. The Rams are, I believe, 4th in pressures, 7th in pressure rate. They're able to get a lot of pressures while, not even sending a multitude of blitzes. Jared Verse is an absolute freak of nature. Byron Young is probably the NFL's most underrated edge rusher. Kobe Turner is fantastic. Braden Fisk is fantastic. Josiah Stewart's been really solid as a rookie. They have a lot of pieces up front that can hurt a team. And the sheer fact that it looks like the Jaguars will have their guy back, arguably their best offensive lineman, that has to mean something. Whether that's in terms of continuity, whether that's in terms of, him and the calls that he makes with Trevor Lawrence and the relationship that they have, I just find it hard to believe that Hainsey being back isn't a big deal for a Jaguars offensive line that needed some good news, because that was a rough performance against Seattle. There's no other way to really put it. That was as bad of a performance as I've ever seen the Jaguars offensive line had in my entire time covering the team. Not just the Trevor Lawrence era. You just don't see offensive lines get kind of routinely beat the way they did throughout the course of that game. So I'm a firm believer that getting Hainsey back is significant. And I am a firm believer that getting Hainsey back could mean good things for a Jaguars offensive line that needed some good news. Facing the Rams a week after you face the Seahawks, a week after you get bludgeoned by the Seahawks defensive front, the schedule gods ain't being kind to you. That's just how it is. But I think getting Hainsey back is big for the Jaguars. And then obviously, on top of that, the second key injury, Puka Nacua with his ankle injury. Did not practice for the second day in a row. The Rams obviously have a bye next week. It kind of feels like that could factor into their plans for Puka Nacua. They have a bye coming up. Why not just give him 2 weeks off? Tutu Atwell went from limited on Wednesday with his hamstring injury to full on Thursday. Now, whether that means he plays, we'll see. But being full on Thursday is obviously a good sign for Tutu Atwell. I'd expect Tutu Atwell and Jordan Whittington to be the number 2 receivers next to Devontae Adams if Puka doesn't play. And Puka is, for my money, one of the 3 best receivers in the NFL. I think it's whatever order you want to put it in. I don't think you can go wrong. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Puka Nacua. And Jackson Smith-Njigba's getting up there. I'll say that as well. But I just think he's as an elite of a player as you can find. He's so tough and physical after the catch as a blocker. Really, everything they do on offense kind of flows through him and his talents. And him potentially, and even likely, not being available for this game, that's huge. That can't be understated. That would be a significant loss for the Los Angeles Rams. And as long as they take advantage of it, would be a significant benefit for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. Be back next time.